Hey guys, today I'm talking about getting completely free plants from places like Home Depot, Lowe's, and even your local garden center, from everything from strawberries to Japanese maples, and it's completely legal to do. There's nothing unethical about it. A lot of this stuff will end up completely destroyed if it's not taken to your garden. So it's one of those ways that you can really change your garden without spending any money. So I'll show you everything I know about getting free plants without breaking any rules. Now, believe it or not, I paid absolutely nothing for these two tiny Japanese maples, but these Japanese maples could grow into a beautiful tree. I'll show you a tree right next to my driveway that I've had for 25 years, and it started out very small, similar to these, and it's just grown completely massive in the last 25 years. Now, Japanese maples are a slow-growing plant, and it will take a long time for these things to reach maturity, but I'll show you exactly where to look in a garden center. They were taken from beneath a rows and rows of Japanese maples. And what it was is they'll drop their seeds in the fall, and in the springtime and early summer, you'll see seedlings coming up. If I had not picked these out of the gravel from beneath the maples, they would have been trampled, walked on, and killed. So the manager had no problem with me just removing these from the ground. I mentioned it to him, and he said, no, take them away. So this is one of those things that if you just visit your local garden centers, if they have a gravel type of area, Japanese maples will drop those seeds in those areas, and believe it or not, it will produce quite a few seeds right below where the trees are sitting. Now, it's really hard to see how majestic this Japanese maple looks because in the springtime it is a fluorescent green, and as it gets later into summer it turns more of a darker green and then becomes a beautiful shade of red orange in the fall. But what I'm trying to point out here is right below this Japanese maple is this little small gravel area, and often the seeds will fall right here without any assistance or watering from me. These seeds will sprout out and start a new tree. So that's one thing to look for when you're at a garden center around a lot of Japanese maples. Look around and you might find some growing. Now, if it's a cement area, you're not going to find anything, but anywhere there's soil, they'll drop their seeds. Now, if you're on good terms with your local manager at your garden center, you might just ask him, hey, do you mind if I pick a seed or two off the tree? And this is what you're looking for. You want to collect them, maybe at the end of the season if they have a chance to mature. But I'll put a link to the video where I talk about growing Japanese maples from seed up above. Now, the same goes for hydrangea. At the end of the season, if no one's purchased a hydrangea, there will be massive amounts of seeds on these, and just tapping it a little bit into your hand will drop the seeds right into it. I've got a video that talks about propagating hydrangeas as well. These are oak leaf hydrangeas, or what we call them here in Zone 7A, wild hydrangeas. So there's always the possibility of collecting seeds from hydrangea, preferably at the end of the season once they've had a chance to mature, and these have all turned brown and ready to be collected. Now, the garden window in my house is actually a great place where I grow succulents. It gets really too much sun and too much heat to grow much of anything else. So I have a lot of cacti and succulents growing in this window, but everything in this pot right here was actually found on the floor at the Home Depot or Lowe's. It had just broken off a plant and it was just laying there on the ground, probably going to wither within 24, 48 hours. So I picked them up, put them in this container, and they've all grown into beautiful plants. Now, I did a video showing you how to put together these little small Japanese style gardens inside of a container like this, and I'll put that video up above as well. So not only can you find free plants at your local garden center, you can find them in the produce aisle of your local grocery store. This is just a purple sweet potato. I've put it in water. You can see there's a lot of roots down there, but it's sending off shoots. And this is another way to get free plants from your grocery store. You can see once you break them off and put them in a container like this, they start growing roots and they're ready for your vegetable garden. I'll put a link up above that shows you exactly how to do this whole process as well. Now, this is a bed of pickerel, and it is a beautiful flower that blooms. It attracts bees like crazy. I don't know if you can see them, but there's bees swarming to it right now, pollinating the flowers. But pickerel is a bog plant, and this was collected from private property. It wasn't a garden center, it wasn't Lowe's, it wasn't Home Depot, it was just private property. I picked one or two plants out of the ground, make sure I got the root system. I built this little bog area. It actually has no filter. It just has soil and sand on top to keep the frogs and mosquitoes from driving me crazy. But this is just a simple bog plant that started from just a couple of plants that I picked out of a bog area, not a public park or anything like that. Although you can do it at public parks, if you talk to the manager or the management of the park and make sure that it's okay. At some national parks and some state parks, you can get a collection permit for plants, but you have to talk to the office first. I know that there was a forestry guy on YouTube that actually collected bonsai from the forest, but he had to have a special permit to collect one tree, and it had to be tagged as he collected it. But something like this, it spreads incredibly fast. Every year this gets better than the year before. So if you like a flowering bog plant, I think this is one of the best. It's called pickerel. So I purchased these strawberry plants last week from Home Depot, and I haven't did a good job of keeping them watered, so I need to get them planted and watered today. But I picked these strawberry plants specifically for a feature each one had. If you notice, there's a runner coming off of each strawberry plant, and this will produce a whole new strawberry plant. So you're purchasing one plant, and not only can you get one free plant, but you can get multiple plants from this runner. I'm going to take you out to the garden and show you what one of the runners is doing out in the vegetable garden. Now, as you can see, this is the mother plant, and these plants are about $6 each at Lowe's and Home Depot, but it's sent out a runner, and it looks like there's another one ready to be stuck into the soil right here, and also there's one here, and I've taken just a landscape fabric pin and stuck in there so it would keep the runner in contact with the soil. So a whole new plant is formed in less than a month, and next year this will produce strawberries. This year, this one's currently producing strawberries. Then the runner comes back around, and there's another small root system forming here, and then there's a third one forming here. So in all, from this one plant, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 possible plants, and maybe even a 5th plant starting here. So finding these strawberry plants that already have runners on them at your Home Depot, Lowe's, or garden center, that is the most important thing. If you want to maximize your strawberries, make sure you look for these runners in their starting phases, and then you can take them home and produce multiple free plants from one $6 strawberry plant. Now, this collection of aloe vera plants started from just 2 plants, and the smaller plants were created using PUPS, pups, small offsets of the mother plant. As you can see on the second plant, there's about 3 small plants in the second aloe vera plant. So what you're doing is you're looking for an aloe vera plant that has some smaller pups off to the side where you can create a whole new plant. So it's being creative and keeping your eye out for the way the particular plant you want, the way it produces, and the way it sometimes can grow underground. It can send off seeds. So there's so many different ways. Study the plant that you want to get for free and find out how it reproduces. Now, you may have to pay for the first plant, but the second, fourth, fifth, 10th, 20th, 30th plant that you propagate from the original plant can go on forever, and you'll never have to buy that one plant again. So basically, you're getting free plants. Now, here's a small collection of plants that I've paid nothing for. I've actually just reproduced the original plant. I'm going to show you some of these in the garden. These are one of my favorite plants. They're called cast iron plants. They're really tough, and they send out new shoots every year. And sometimes you'll actually find a root growing out by itself. You can collect that one. I collected 2 or 3 originals, and it's turned into an entire area of nothing but these. So sometimes garden centers will have a broken pot. Maybe they ended up in the garbage, because sometimes if these are not taken care of, they can look really bad the second year. So if they don't sell that at the end of the season, they end up in the dumpster. So I would say dumpster diving is a legitimate way of getting free plants, but you have to talk to the management before you do something like that, because you can cause a big problem for yourself. So here is hosta. This hosta was taken from a split, and it's super simple to do. You buy the original hosta, and at the end of the season, you can split it into 2, 3, or even 4 plants. These 2 right here were taken from cuttings. They're camellias, and I've got a lot of videos that show you how to do this. So I'll try to link one up above specifically about hostas. But again, you can do this with so many different types of plant. You buy the original plant, and you just keep reproducing it until you have as many as you want. Now, after speaking briefly about plants that look bad, a lot of times before the management of Home Depot or Lowe's or any garden center completely throws a plant away, they'll put it on a clearance shelf where you can get plants for 50 cents, $1. I've gotten some astounding bargains. I think the lowest I've ever paid for a small, tiny succulent was 25 cents, because it was the end of season. They were getting ready to bring the holiday stuff in, and so they needed to get rid of anything that was left. So one of those things, if it's a damaged or just it's not a really healthy looking plant, you can buy it at a super discount. Now, a lot of people think that an unhealthy looking plant is not going to produce anything beautiful in your garden. I just want to briefly say, if you have a chance, watch the documentary called A Man Named Pearl. His name was Pearl Fry or Fryer, I believe, and he lived in one of the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina. He created a topiary garden from his local landscape supply, which would throw out evergreen topiaries. He'd go and get them and form them into a beautiful garden. So it's a 20-year-old documentary, and I'm not 100% sure if he's still living, but it was an interesting way that he produced an entire garden that thousands and thousands of people came to see his garden, and they just were all free plants. So it's one of those things that if you're creative and you do things the right way, you can create a beautiful garden with paying a very small amount of money for it. Now, in addition to asking your manager of your Home Depot or Lowe's for maybe a small broken plant or a seed or something like that, you can also look in the parking lot in buggies and carts. We call them buggies here in the South, but most people, I guess, everywhere else call them carts. But as people are unloading plants into the carts, a lot of times they'll break something off, and you can actually find pieces of plants in the parking lot, especially in the springtime when plants are just being sold left and right. So just a quick walk through, you might find a plant or a piece of a plant that you can turn into a whole new creation. This is ginger, and it started from a small piece of organic ginger I purchased at the grocery store. It has to be organic or it may not sprout. It may have a sprout inhibitor on it. But you can use what you want to for your sushi if you're making your own sushi, or if you just like ginger. Pickled ginger is the way that most people get it in a jar. But you can start a ginger plant just from a grocery store ginger for free. You can take, sometimes there's multiple ginger in one packet. You can use what you want, take the rest of it and create a free plant or almost free plant. Now in these 3 beds, I have cucumber, zucchini, and squash. And when I'm going through the garden center and I'm selecting my vegetables, if I haven't started them from seed myself, and in a lot of cases I do start from seed, but if I'm like this year, I've waited too late and I got my zucchini and squash from the garden center, I always check carefully in the pots to make sure there's multiple seeds. I never want to select one pot that only has 1 plant per container. So you can get 2 or 3 plants in a container, and you got 2 or 3 free plants for the price of 1, which really reduces the price of your vegetables in the springtime if you don't start from seed yourself. Now this plant is called Goya, and it is a Japanese bitter melon, and it's cost me so little. It's practically free because I started with seeds, planted them one time, and they've reseeded themselves every single year for 12 years. So I paid once for the seeds, and they're very cheap. You can get them online. I'll try to find them on Amazon or somewhere, place a link down below. But things like this that reseed themselves, and you have to do a little research because not all vegetables, very few vegetables reseed themselves unless you let maybe something like squash just sit on the ground and rotten and reseed itself. But using seeds from last year is practically the way that all gardeners have done their gardening for hundreds of years, thousands of years. But in this case, I don't even have to reseed it. It reseeds itself. It comes back every year. So most Americans would hate this plant because it's very bitter, but it's very good for you, and I will eat it. I can just mix it with some scrambled eggs and make a Japanese dish, or I should say my wife does, and she does a great job with it. But Japanese bitter melon is one of those things that does reseed itself. So let's say you wanted to find a mature plant for free, like a very mature plant, maybe an extremely old plant. Well, there's a simple way to do that as well. Look for construction companies that are clearing lots, maybe tearing down houses, building a new house, just clearing a lot. And a lot of times they'll use heavy machinery to dig up an entire plant, something like boxwoods and things like that you'll see on the side of the road that are just waiting to be picked up by the garbage service and thrown away. And those plants could be 30, 40, 50 years old and just need to be replanted. But the construction company, that's not the business they're in. And they're into building new houses or new structures and not into gardening. So that's one way to, if you get in good with a local construction company and just ask them, hey, would you text me or email me and I'll shoot you a $20 bill, maybe something like that. A little bit of bribery might go a long way with a construction site manager, and you can get some really expensive plants for basically free except for your bribe. Now, we said construction companies are not in the business of gardening, but the business of gardeners, landscaping companies, a lot of times someone may want to have an entire area torn out of certain type of flowers, shrubs, trees, and brought in something new that they want. So landscape companies will sometimes sell the things they dig up if they don't reuse them themselves. So if you get in good with a landscaping company, you could just ask them, hey, what do you do with the things you dig up? Would you be willing to part with it at no charge or a very low charge? And you could get mature plants from them as well. Now that's a little bit more of a long shot because they can reuse the plants in other ways in other landscapes, but not always. So sometimes digging things like that up where they're putting in something new for a customer might get you some really nice plants at a very low cost or no cost. So guys, nature has a very strong will to reproduce itself, and it can do it from just dropping seeds anywhere, multiplying itself in the ground in so many different ways, such as these strawberry plants that are just trying to multiply themselves for survival. So guys, I appreciate you so much for watching, and I hope you'll try some of these methods of getting some free plants. It's a great way to do it. Have a great day.